to vote in the Commons not to leave on no deal basis, that the uncertainty we've seen is nothing to what's coming up.
Yes, because as I think I heard you say a little while ago, we don't just claim an extension, we ask for an extension. We need permission. We've no idea what the response will be. They'll want to know what we want it for. They'll want to know that we're not going to have it beyond the European elections coming up. And it may be that they attach terms to the extension that MPs then want to vote again on. It's really hard to say.
Is it not possible, though, as Parliament seems to take control of this process, as the government seems to be losing control of the process, there's not a majority in the Commons for any of the main alternatives, that people might begin to think, well, we didn't really like Mrs. May's deal, but at least it was a deal, at least it was a way forward, at least it's told us we'd move into a transition period, we'd leave after 21 months, investment could be unleashed, the economy would start to grow more quickly.
But that would be the argument, wouldn't it, for signing up to the deal, regardless of what your views are. The trouble, and it is happening, and you're right to point that out, and there's a bit of crumbling away. I think the hardline Brexiteers, the ERG, who've driven this resistance, you can see a few of those. There's the softer end of them thinking in the way that you're suggesting, Andrew. The trouble is, the timeline is too short, the numbers are not big enough. It's like it's a film that's been badly put together. The soundtrack and the pictures are not matching. She may think that if she can get that extension, which is why I say, like, maybe a zombie, but zombies can go on for a while, that she may have another run at it, and she may try for another run at this, unless someone is brave enough in her own ranks to say, well, I'm going to put my hat in the ring and try and do it instead.
And it is true that if it doesn't appear there's anything Parliament can agree on, one way forward might be to come back to her deal. Another way would be to go for a second referendum, a fresh referendum.
Or a general election,
yes.
Of course. But then, of course, what do the parties stand on?
I just say we're watching MPs coming back in. The House is filling up again, but the lobbies have still got a lot of people in them. This is a big vote, a lot of votes to count. And as I say, it's a physical vote there. We're getting things you see there coming through in Twitter. That's a picture of the packed lobbies, all going in to vote.
And of course, the bigger the vote against her, the longer it takes to vote.
Can we say one thing with certainty, if this vote goes down big time tonight, that we are not leaving the European Union on the 29th of March?
No, I don't think we can even say that for sure. I think there seems to be a lot of certainty from Remainers that, yes, easily we can get this idea of no deal off the table, despite the fact that no deal is the table, and that we can absolutely get this delay, as you've made clear. We can revoke Article 50, but we can't actually unilaterally actually try and extend it. And when would you get an extension?
We can try to extend it.
Yeah, but not unilaterally.
No, but the EU is likely to agree to an extension.
But they are likely to agree, but in return for what? And that's the
so therefore we don't leave on the 29th.
Well, I think it's still to pay for.
Once Parliament has decided it wants to do something, say she won tonight, then I think you can do things remarkably fast. Opposition crumbles and everybody just gets behind the wheel. So it might just be possible to do it by the 29th. I don't know.
I suspect not, although a lot of our guarantees don't last too long these days. I suspect not, and I think that the mood is aligned for an extension, both in Downing Street and talking to European capitals. I think that's where they feel it's now going, but there has to be a purpose to it. It has to be sold as a technical extension, even if it's something else.
The mood in the EU and the mood in the House of Commons maybe for an extension, it certainly isn't among the British people. The one thing they all agree on, Remain or Leave, is get it over and done with.
So you think an extension would be unpopular?
I think that when MPs actually have to come to it, they have to vote, and it's a public vote, we'll know how they voted, and then they have to face their electorates in their constituencies, having delayed Brexit. I think they will find that that's not a popular move.
Well, let's have a look at the Commons again. Most MPs are now back in. The voting's coming to an end. It's 7:15. We'll be expecting the result any moment now. You'll see 4 tellers march up to the mace of the House of Commons, and they will deliver the result verbally and on paper to the Speaker of the House. Mrs. May, of course, came back from Strasbourg. She had made a number of changes. She has now just sat down on the front bench, on the Treasury bench, as they call it, in the Prime Minister's place. I suspect she pretty much knows she's lost. She had hoped she'd got enough changes to the agreement that her Attorney General would say that this was a major legal change, on the country's ability to leave the Northern Irish backstop. He did not do that. So the Ulster Unionists, so now the DUP, the Democratic Unionist Party, decided it couldn't support the change, the tweaked agreement, which meant that the Jacob Rees-Mogg Eurosceptic wing of the Tory party couldn't either. And for these three reasons together, she needed all three to happen to be able to get a majority for her deal, and even then it might have been a stretch. But neither of these things has happened, which is why the expectation here tonight in Westminster is that she is going down to defeat. What then happens? Nobody quite knows. We are expecting a statement from the Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister may well make a statement either on leaving on no deal, perhaps ruling that out, or saying she is now going to have to go to Brussels to ask for an extension to the whole Article 50 process. Let's go to Vicky Young. Vicky's still in the central lobbies of Parliament. Vicky, what are you hearing now the vote's taken place?
Yeah, I mean, the speculation is all about what she is likely to say when she stands up. We are led to believe she is going to say something, which of course she has to if there's another huge defeat, as we expect. The timetable, as it has been set out previously, is that if she's defeated, tomorrow there's another vote on whether there should be a no-deal Brexit. Should the UK leave the EU at the end of March without any deal at all? Now, given previous votes similar to that and knowing the parliamentary makeup, it's very clear that that would not get through. So the likelihood of us leaving at the end of March without a deal, I think, will be ruled out by Parliament tomorrow. And the next stage after that is to say to the Prime Minister, you need to go and ask for a delay to Brexit. Now, the question and speculation today has centred a bit around whether the Prime Minister decides to say, at this point, I will ask for a delay to Brexit now. But of course, it throws up so many questions. The EU has to agree to any delay to Brexit. They might well say, well, you can only delay for a year. You only can have a long extension of Article 50. So I think that's fraught with all sorts of issues. But what it means is that MPs, Parliament, will be taking control of the Brexit process rather than the Prime Minister being in control of it. And that is not a good place for any Prime Minister to be. And that's why I think there's been so much speculation today about whether she could carry on, really, if her deal is defeated in such a huge way. There are many people who feel, certainly lots of Tories, who feel they wouldn't want her to lead them into another general election. They feel that her times, her days might be numbered in the job. But as we've seen from the past, she does tend to carry on. Lots of people have praised her fortitude, her resilience for carrying on in the face of adversity. You know, and in the end, as one minister put it to me earlier, you know, there are lots of people who don't want Brexit to happen at all. There are lots of people who don't want no deal to happen. And so she's come up with a compromise that really not very many people want. It's gone very quiet here, everyone expecting that vote to come. But there is no sign of the tellers. Now, just to explain to people who probably don't watch this every day, that 4 people will walk in. They will walk up to that table that you see in the middle, and they will read out the result. They talk about the ayes. They are the people who will be voting for the deal, and the noes will be those who have voted against it. But as we heard earlier from a couple of MPs who were walked out of here, from what they could see, because as you said, it's a physical voting system. There's no pressing of a button. There's no electronic voting here. You walk physically through one way or the other. So it's pretty easy for MPs to assess what has happened. Now, I don't know what the delay is here. They are clearly, all the MPs are back in, up to 650 MPs. You can see it's absolutely packed in there, compared to earlier where the Prime Minister actually was making a pretty important speech and there were lots of empty seats, which is pretty unusual for such a huge day. But normally you see the tellers, they come through, they have to barge their way through the crowds, come up and read out the result. Now, quite often there's a delay if it's a very, very close result.
In the lobbies, on the assumption that he can get anywhere near them.
So the Speaker intervened there, but there's still no sign of the tellers. They're either slow counters or they're just making sure that they get this historic result right. As I say, the Prime Minister's in place. And as Vicky was saying there, tonight's vote is not the end of it if Mrs May's deal goes down. A vote is scheduled for tomorrow night in which the Commons will vote on leaving with no deal at all. That is the current legal default position, but the Commons will have a view on that, and the expectation is that the Commons will intervene to stop us leaving on no deal, to get the law changed before March the 29th by a parliamentary technique. And then it's not over after that, because there's another vote scheduled on Thursday night when it is expected that the Commons will instruct the Prime Minister to ask for an extension to the Brexit process, this Article 50 process as it's being called, which means we won't leave on the 20th. So the tellers now seem to be gathering. Why don't we make sure we don't miss it and go in now?
Order! Order!
The ayes to the right, 242. The noes to the left, 391.
To the right, 242. The noes to the left, 391. So the noes have it. The noes have it. Unlock. Order.
So the Prime Minister hasn't just lost her Brexit deal for a second time. She's lost big time. Let us listen to the Prime Minister.
I regret the decision that this House has taken tonight. I continue to believe that by far the best outcome is that the United Kingdom leaves the European Union in an orderly fashion with a deal. And that the deal we've negotiated is the best and indeed the only deal available. But Mr. Speaker, I would like to set out briefly how the government means to proceed. 2 weeks ago, I made a series of commitments from this dispatch box regarding the steps we would take in the event that this House rejected the deal on offer. I stand by those commitments in full. Therefore, tonight we will table a motion for debate tomorrow to test whether the House supports leaving the European Union without a deal on the 29th of March. The Leader of the House will shortly make an emergency business statement confirming the change to tomorrow's business. This is an issue of grave importance for the future of our country. Just like the referendum, there are strongly held and equally legitimate views on both sides. For that reason, I can confirm that this will be a free vote on this side of the House. I have personally struggled with this choice, as I'm sure many other honourable members will. I'm passionate about delivering the result of the referendum, but I equally passionately believe that the best way to do that is to leave in an orderly way with a deal. And I still believe that there is a majority in the House for that course of action. And I'm conscious also of my duties as Prime Minister of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and of the potential damage to the Union that leaving without a deal could do when one part of our country is without devolved governance. I can therefore confirm that the motion will read that this House declines to approve leaving the European Union without a withdrawal agreement and a framework on the future relationship on the 29th of March 2019, and notes that leaving without a deal remains the default in UK and EU law unless this House and the EU ratify an agreement. I will return to the House to open the debate tomorrow and to take interventions from honourable members and to ensure the House is fully informed in making this historic decision. The government will tomorrow publish information on essential policies which would need to be put in place if we were to leave without a deal. These will cover our approach to tariffs and the Northern Ireland border, among other matters. If the House votes to leave without a deal on the 29th of March, it will be the policy of the government to implement that decision. If the House declines to approve leaving without a deal on the 29th of March, the government will, following that vote, bring forward a motion on Thursday on whether Parliament wants to seek an extension to Article 50. If the House votes for an extension, the government will seek to agree that extension with the EU and bring forward the necessary legislation to change the exit date commensurate with that extension. But let me be clear. Voting against leaving without a deal and for an extension does not solve the problems we face. The EU will want to know what use we mean to make of such an extension. And this House will have to answer that question. Does it wish to revoke Article 50? Does it want to hold a second referendum? Or does it want to leave with a deal but not this deal? These are unenviable choices. But thanks to the decision that the House has made this evening, they are choices that must now be faced.
Point of order, Mr. Jeremy Corbyn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The government has been defeated again by an enormous majority, and they must now accept their deal, their proposal, the one the Prime Minister has put, is clearly dead and does not have the support of this House. And quite clearly, no deal must be taken off the table. We've said that before, and we'll say that again. But it does mean the House has got to come together with a proposal that could be negotiated. The Labour Party has put that proposal, and we will put that proposal again, because the dangers of what the Prime Minister is proposing are basically that she carries on threatening us all with the danger of no deal, the danger of that, knowing full well the damage that will do to the British economy. This party will put forward our proposals again, which are about a negotiated customs union, access to the market and protection of rights. Those are the ones we'll put forward. We believe there may well be a majority for them, but there will also be the potential of negotiating them. The Prime Minister has run down the clock, and the clock has been run out on her. Maybe it's time instead we had a general election and the people could choose who their government should be.
Point of order, Mr. Ian Blackford.
The big news from Westminster tonight, going round the world, is that the Prime Minister, Theresa May, has lost for a second time her Brexit deal in the Commons. This time it's gone down by 149 votes, not as many as the 230 first time round, but 149 is a huge defeat by any standards. A hoarse and somewhat dejected Prime Minister there, saying that tomorrow she would proceed with allowing the Commons to vote on whether we should leave with no deal. She announced that there would be a free vote on the government side, probably because any attempt to whip the Cabinet or the Conservative Party in favour of leaving on no deal would split it wide open. And if the Commons rejects leaving on no deal tomorrow night, there'll be a third vote on Thursday night in which the Commons will get to ask the Prime Minister to seek an extension to the Article 50 process, meaning we likely don't leave on March the 29th. Let's go straight back to Vicky Young in the Houses of Parliament. Must be getting pretty tumultuous in there, Vicky. It's quite a night.
Yeah, it is. I mean, another huge defeat, of course, on that deal, and that important information there from the Prime Minister. She will go ahead, as you said, with those two votes in the next couple of days, but crucially, they shall give a free vote. Now, just to explain that to people, it means that she will not be directing her MPs to vote in any particular way. They are allowed to vote according to their own personal point of view. It's highly unusual on something so important, but she knows her party is deeply split on this, and she would have had resignations on one side or the other if she'd gone one way or the other. Let's now speak to Sir Graham Brady. He is really the person who's in charge of the backbenchers, who represents them. What do you make? Another massive defeat for the Prime Minister.
Well, I represent the backbenchers. I wouldn't claim to be in charge of them, and I'm glad that that is a responsibility that I have to fulfil. It's a very difficult situation now. I supported the government this evening, not because I thought the amended agreement was perfect. It was far from it, but it was a step in the right direction. The attorney had strengthened his legal advice, and I felt very strongly it's really time now to move forward and for us to demonstrate we can get on with this and give the country some of the certainty and clarity that people crave. The danger now, I think, over the next couple of days is that things might get more confusing rather than more straightforward. And I think all members of Parliament are going to have to reflect on the importance of demonstrating that they respect the views of the British people, who have given a clear democratic mandate in the referendum, and that they do not wish simply to delay or prevent us leaving the European Union,
It looks like there will now be probably a delay to Brexit. And for those of you who are very much supporting Brexit, are you dismayed that now that may not happen on time?
Well, I think it is fair to say that there is an enormous difference between a delay to our departure because we had reached an agreement and a delay to our departure without an agreement in place. In my view, anybody who votes to delay our departure when we have no agreement is simply voting not to leave. It's clearly contrary to the manifesto promises of both of the major parties. Labour and Conservatives both pledged we would leave the European Union, we would leave the customs union too. So it would be a clear breach of the manifestos on which MPs were nearly all elected.
Thanks, Graham Brady. Thank you very much indeed. So another hugely important vote due here tomorrow night.
Vicky, thanks very much for that. Mrs May's deal goes down again by a huge majority against it. We're joined by former Labour Minister in the Blair-Brown years, also a European Commissioner, Peter Mandelson. Peter, you know how Brussels works well. If we go and ask now for an extension, if that's what we end up doing by the end of this week, what's the EU's attitude likely to be?
I think the EU will want to know first and foremost what the purpose of the extension is. If it's simply for a couple of months more, for the cabinet to remain divided, for MPs to wrangle and for no clear outcome to come from this whole process, I think quite frankly they're more likely to say, you know, you've had your vote. If you want to revoke Article 50, that's one thing. But simply to stumble on in this sort of chaos is not something we want you to inflict on us any longer.
So it would follow from there that the EU is likely to ask for a long extension,
I believe
perhaps
it would.
a year or so,
I believe it would, and quite honestly, I think that's probably the best thing. Look, from the EU's point of view, Andrew, for the next 6 months plus, they are going to be completely preoccupied with the European elections, parliamentary elections, which are going to be very rough. They're going to produce a result of those elections, which is going to probably be a very fragmented and rather difficult to manage European Parliament. They're then going to have to nominate commissioners because this is the change of the entire political cycle.
Mr Juncker steps down.
Mr Juncker steps down. They have to agree who replaces him, who does the other top jobs. And then, come the autumn, all those people have to be ratified in those or confirmed in those jobs by the European Parliament. Look, we're getting towards November and December before the European Union is going to want to turn back to the problems created by Brexit. You know, that's just a reality. They have their lives, they have their business, they've got to sort of carry on with life as normal. And so I think that from our point of view as well, we need to take a step back. Everyone needs to take a deep breath and really consider what are the fundamental choices available to us. Given the result of the referendum in 2016, given that we've run into a huge brick wall 3 years later, what can and should we do now? What are the options? And it's going to take longer to consider those than 2 months.
But a long extension would suit your purpose because you think, and I think you've been telling Brussels, Paris and Berlin this, the longer the extension, the more likely you get your second vote.
No, I haven't actually been telling Brussels that. I think they can work that out for themselves. That the longer this whole awful long-drawn process goes on, for it to have any sort of legitimacy, I mean political legitimacy at the end of the day, the outcome of the whole thing has actually got to be signed off by the British people themselves.
Let me stop you there.
That's my view, and I think it's a growing view in the country.
And we thank you for giving us that view tonight. Let's go back to our Europe editor, Katja Adler in Strasbourg. We're getting some European reaction already, Katja. What is it?
Absolutely. We've heard from the spokesman of the European Council President, and of course he is the man who represents all 27 EU countries in Brussels, and he's expressed disappointment and regret at the rejection of the Brexit deal, but also it's added that the EU feels that considering it gave all those extra clarifications yesterday on the backstop and the wider withdrawal agreement, that the EU doesn't see what else it could do, and that any solution to this impasse needs to come from the UK. That is the EU perspective at this point. They think that the rejection of the deal tonight makes the possibility of a no-deal Brexit even more probable, because don't forget, even if Parliament votes to avoid a no-deal Brexit, you're going to need to unite around something, even if there is an extension, if it's a short one or if it's a long one. What is the guarantee that a solution can be found by the end of that? So the EU says it will be continuing its no-deal preparations and that it is open for a request from the United Kingdom for an extension for delaying the Brexit date, but the EU says it wants to know very clearly from the Prime Minister for what purpose she would require this extension. Now, just to give you a sense of the mood in the EU, it is a hardening mood. EU leaders want to avoid a no-deal Brexit, but they're not willing to do that at any price at all.
Katja Adler in Strasbourg, giving us the mood in Europe as a result of what's happened in Westminster tonight. If you've just joined this BBC One news special on the vote on Mrs May's Brexit deal, the news is that it went down and went down badly. She lost by a majority of 149. Not as badly as first time round when the majority against her was 230. By all historic Westminster standards, to lose by 149 votes is a huge amount. And it throws into doubt what happens next. The House has now rejected Mrs May's deal twice. So, joining me from the Houses of Parliament is the Deputy Chair of the Conservative Party, James Cleverly. James Cleverly, the Prime Minister has lost twice. She's lost by a lot. It's the issue that's dominated her administration, but she's lost. Why did she not announce her resignation tonight?
Because the Prime Minister has made it clear that she regards this as her professional duty to deliver the Brexit that people voted for in 2016. She inherited this job. It wasn't a task of her choosing, but she's embraced it, and she's going to work to deliver that. The statement that she made in the House made it clear that she is committed to honouring the referendum result. And if it were easy, it would all be sorted out by now, but it was never going to be easy, and she's continued to do the right thing.
So could you tell our viewers when there's been a time in British politics when a Prime Minister has lost on such a crucial vote by so much twice and not resigned?
We have not been through a situation before, Andrew, where we've been extricating ourselves from the European Union. These are unprecedented times. The 40 or so years that we've been a member of the European European Union has meant that there have been changes that I've not had to work through in my professional life, or indeed I suspect even in yours. Judging things on past norms is no longer the case. The Prime Minister has made it clear she feels she has a duty to deliver what the British people voted for. That's what she's working on.
Yes, but it may be that she hasn't got control of this anymore. Tomorrow there's going to be a vote in leaving without a deal. That's going to be a free vote on the Conservative side, so it almost certainly will not get through. She's then going to be forced probably to ask for an extension to the Brexit process by Parliament. Will tell her to do this. She may want to deliver, as you say. Is it not the case that she is losing control of this process both to Parliament and to the European Union?
Well, the points that you made are, in terms of the process, are quite possibly going to play out in that way. But that's more to do with parliamentary maths than the work that she's been doing as Prime Minister. She has been relentlessly focused on delivering.
It's parliamentary maths, Mr. Cleverly, that makes us a democracy. We work on parliamentary maths. We elect a Commons, and the Commons votes.
Yes, indeed. And changing the leader wouldn't make a single iota of difference to that parliamentary maths. So the Prime Minister is having to navigate a very, very difficult course through the unique set of circumstances that we are being presented with. And she is doing so with a degree of robustness and resilience that I think I and a lot of my constituents, indeed a lot of people around the country, admire massively, and that's being reflected in the conversations that I have when I'm out on the doorsteps.
And a total lack of success so far, Mr. Cleverly, too. Tell me this, if the Prime Minister is forced to seek an extension to Article 50, for how long and to what purpose?
Well, I'm not a fan of seeking an extension, and I've not had we've literally just come from the vote, so I've not had a chance to discuss with the Whip's office or indeed the team at Number 10 about what that extension might look like, and indeed the motion that will be put forward will be amendable, so that might come out through the amendment. From my own personal view, I think the position of the EU is clear. They've said that they are not keen on the idea of an extension, particularly if there's not an explicit purpose to that extension. My view as a long-standing Brexiteer is that the best thing that we could do now is provide the certainty that business has been screaming out for by leaving in good order on the date that has been put in the public domain through the Article 50 vote, and then get on with the trade negotiations that we all want to focus on.
So you're going to vote for no deal tomorrow?
Well, I'm going to vote in accordance with what I've been saying for the last couple of years.
Are you going to vote for no deal, or aren't you?
I probably will, but that's not because that is my desired option.
No, I understand that.
My desired option is the deal that I've just voted for.
I understand that, but you lost that one, and you lost by 149 votes. All right, Mr. Cleverly, thanks for joining us from Parliament. Joining me